Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week, we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals who are shaping the transplant community. Be sure to support us by leaving that 5-star review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Have a transplant story you'd like to share? We'd love to hear from you at giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. Just look us up. We're there. Today on episode 32, we meet Al Sheneman, who at 26 discovered he had one bad kidney. It wasn't long after that till his life changed as he learned he needed to go on dialysis and receive a kidney transplant. His donor, a lady at church in his choir, had already started testing to be a donor, but learned that was not to be. Then she heard about Al's need and decided it was time to chat with Al's wife. In the end, it all worked out and the way it all was meant to be. So as we kick things off, let's get to know by learning a little bit more about Al before we go into his story. So Al, take it away.
I'm 69 years old, married. I actually had 3 children. Unfortunately, my oldest son was killed in an accident when he was 11. Have 5 grandchildren from 18 years old down to 9. Live in Madison, Georgia, originally from the coast of North Carolina. Had a short time in law enforcement when I first got out of college, about 6 or 7 years, and then I hooked up with the country's largest grocery retailer. And spent 36 years with them before retiring. And when I was 58 in 2014 is actually I retired at the same time as I had my transplant. So that's pretty much Al Sheneman.
All right. Well, it's good to meet you and good to talk to you, and I'd like to get your story. So where did it all begin for Al?
Good gracious, BJ. It began back when I was 26 years old, and I was at work one day and started having a really bad headache, and it just seemed a little bit unusual to me. But anyway, to make a long story short, I scheduled a doctor's appointment, and they wanted to do some tests. And one of the tests they did was an IVP test where they inject dye, and then they look at the organs and blood vessels. I don't know what all they look at. But anyway, at that time, they determined that I only had one functioning kidney, which was a complete shock and surprise to me. They told me the other one was there, but it had atrophied for some reason. So that seemed to be the cause of the blood pressure issues. Anyway, we got that under control. So, that's really where it started. That's 40 years ago. And then when I can go on, I can continue, or I can cut it off. I can cut it off there if you want.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to cut it off there because we want to get your whole story. But now, did that start you on dialysis, or was it? Was it a slow process?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. In fact, it kind of went to the back room for me. I didn't think anything more about it. I remember I did ask if, what point would it become an issue? And they said, whenever the blood pressure became uncontrolled, then they would have to really start looking at it. But anyway, in 1991, I was 35 years old, was playing golf one day. And next thing I knew, I woke up and I was at the hospital. I'd had a heart attack, and it ended up I had to go and have quadruple bypass surgery. And even then, nothing was ever mentioned about the kidney, actually. So, fast forward to, 2011, I'm 54 years old, 55, whatever it is. And I'd gone to the doctor for just I wasn't feeling well, and I'd gone just for a checkup. And he told me at that point that, based on my urinalysis, that my kidneys were blowing a lot of protein into the urine. So he suggested then that I go see a nephrologist, which he recommended one, and I went to see him. And he immediately looked at the urinalysis and, put two and two together, I guess, just as he would do, and sent me to the hospital for a kidney biopsy. So probably a couple of weeks later, I went back to see him to get the results. And, this guy was, he was a comedian. He was a great, great doctor. I love him to death. But anyway, he walked in the room and said, I got good news and bad news. I said, okay, what's the bad news? And he said, well, your good kidney is 80% scarred, which, now I know, that put me at stage 4 kidney renal failure. He said, the good news is we're going to get you a transplant. So, I was, honestly, I was blown away. It just really hit me hard. A lot of the calls, I had a really good friend who had been on dialysis for a number of years and actually had just passed away a few weeks before that because of, his kidney failure. So it just, it just really got on top of me. I was really having a hard time dealing with it. But anyway, they sent me to, Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, the Mason Transplant Clinic, for assessment. So, as you well know, went through assessment there at the hospital and came back that I was not a good candidate. I had to do some things to get myself ready or better shape to accept a transplant. So, at that time, I left kind of defeated. But one thing stuck with me. There was a doctor there who told me, and he could tell, I wasn't accepting it very well. But he told me, he said, Al, you can do it. And the one thing you need to know is God gave people 2 kidneys so they could give one away. So I want you to leave here with a lot of hope that you can get yourself in shape, and we're going to get you a kidney. So with that being said, I worked pretty hard for the next 8 or 9 months, got things in better shape, and went through the assessment and was approved. At the same time, the kidney was getting worse and worse. So eventually, in February of 2014, I went and saw a surgeon, and we'd already determined that I was a candidate for peritoneal dialysis. So I had the catheter placed in February, and then I started my training for PD. And about a month later, I started peritoneal dialysis, which, if your listeners don't know, it's a way that you can remain working and do your dialysis at home while you sleep. So I started that, and, it's quite an experience, having to hook up every night in a sterile environment. And as dialysis fluid went in and out, and, sometimes the alarm would go off in the middle of the night and scare my wife to death, scare me to death. But we got through it. And so in May of that same year, on Mother's Day, we were attending a rather large church in our hometown, and both my wife and I sang in the choir. And we had 3 services, so we were there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But anyway, we go in and, we're putting on our robes. We're getting ready for the first service. And I noticed my wife over in the corner talking to a lady. And you have to understand, this choir was 200 people, and I probably knew 10 of them. But she was talking to a lady that I recognized as being in the choir, but I didn't know who it was. So as the day progressed, we sang in the other 2 services, and it was Mother's Day, and we planned to go out, for lunch afterwards. And we finished the last service. We get into the car and we sit down, and my wife says, I have something to tell you. And I said, okay. She says, did you see the lady I was talking to before we started in the first service? I said, yeah, I did. She said, well, her name is Carrie Ann, and she wanted to tell us that she had been being tested to be a donor for you, and she had just found out that she was approved. And of course, it hit me like a ton of bricks. We'd already had 15 people in the church tried to be tested, but for one reason or another, they were denied. My family, my son, was high blood pressure medicine. My daughter had just had a baby. I wouldn't even ask her to be a donor. Just, real short, none of my family were candidates. But anyway, that, just hit me like a ton of bricks. So after sitting in the car and crying for a few minutes and we got home, I actually looked her up in the church directory, found out what her name was and her phone number, and I called her and told her I'd like to meet with her and her husband. And so we agreed to go to dinner later that week, which we did. And, during dinner, she told me the whole story. And it just actually, she was actually being tested for somebody else in her church. And that person had passed away. And the pastor had told her about me, and she decided to continue the process. So it's a much more detailed story than that from her side. And, I assume we don't have time for that. But anyway, she still had a few more tests to go. She had to go through the psychological profile test. And but as I went to dinner, Debbie and I went to dinner with her and her husband. And, I had to face-to-face, I had to ask her if she was sure. I had to ask her husband if he was okay with it. And then I asked her, she had 3 daughters, and they were all adult. But I asked her if I could meet with her daughters and make sure that they were okay with it. So later that week, we went by our house, and I spoke with her 3 daughters, and they were all, all in. And it's just a special, special family. So just a week or so later, she went through her psychological profile with the daughters at the hospital, and she called me and she said, I told them, they could talk to me all they wanted. I was going to give you a kidney, so they kind of shut it down pretty quick. So they were all kind of shocked by Carrie Ann's spunk, because she's pretty spunky. But anyway, so we got the call that got our date, and we were going to they only do 2 transplants every Friday at the hospital. And they had us set up for the second one. And she called them and said, that's not going to work, because God told me we'd be first. So, a few days went by, and sure enough, my transplant coordinator called me and said, we've had something come up with the person that was going to go first that morning, so we've moved y'all up. So sure enough, on June 27th of 2014, we went in and got it done, man. And, I woke up, and I'll tell you, and maybe you can relate, I opened my eyes in recovery, and there was a clock on the wall. We'd gone back at 7:30. There was a clock on the wall that said 1:10 p.m. But when I opened my eyes and I looked, everything just seemed like it was so much brighter and so much clearer. And it amazed me. I had to stop and just really, really look around. And, of course, I was told, through dialysis, all the toxins aren't getting taken out of your body. There's still a certain amount, left. But that apparently affects your eyesight as well. But that's just one of the little tidbits that just amazed me. But went to the neat thing was, I went to a room, and that was 1:10. At 3:30, she was standing by my bed talking to me. She had her kidney removed robotically. She was standing by my bed talking to me. That was a Friday. She got out of the hospital the next morning. And then the next day, Sunday, her and her husband came back. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Varsity restaurant in Atlanta. It's world renowned for their hot dogs. But anyway, they have a drink down there called Orange Slush or something. And she had brought me one. And I just thought that was amazing. She went on vacation the next week. She would probably tell you today she shouldn't have, but she did.
I was going to say, that's pretty wild going on vacation the next week after that.
Yeah, she did. And, she's doing well. We get together, every they live about 30 or 40 miles from us, but we try to get together periodically and go to dinner. And, you know, we stay pretty close. I mean, she's like my sister now, and, you know, love her to death, got a great family. Her daughters are married, she's got grandkids now. So, but that's kind of the story. I mean, there's a lot more that goes with it on her side, not so much me, but I did have a time of a little short depression there where I got to thinking about it and remembering my friend and all he went through on dialysis. And, you know, it was hard, but, you know, just a strong faith, and everybody at the transplant center was so kind and so compassionate. And then my nurses that trained me on PD, they were awesome, do anything and everything to help me get through that. The peritoneal wasn't a big issue. Once I got accustomed to it and understood how it flowed, and, you know, you had to be in a sterile environment. You know, we had to close off the bedroom and, you know, wear the plastic gloves and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But, you know, it wasn't that big a deal once I got used to it. I guess the biggest thing was the hose running to the catheter was, if I remember, it's probably, I don't know, a couple feet long, and you had to roll it up and then tape it to your side, you know, while you're out working. Now, work wasn't too easy for me because I had a lot of climbing to do, a certain amount of lifting and whatnot. So that part of it was a little bit difficult, but I had worked, my whole goal when I was working was to retire when I was 55, and 58 with the kidney, I was ready. You know, finances were good, so I went ahead and pulled the trigger and retired shortly after I got the transplant. So since then, life has been excellent. It's been really good. I've had great checkups. You know, as you know, you have to see nephrologists periodically. My blood work's been good. My GFR, you know, is a little bit low. My creatinine, I'll never forget, he told me, because you have to picture Carrie Ann. She's about, golly, I hate to miss, but she's about 5'4", maybe 100 and nothing. And, you know, when you have a transplant, they want the donor to be about the same size, because the kidney being the size of your hand or your fist, they want one that's about the size of your fist coming in. But hers wasn't, believe me. And I'll never forget, they talked to her about doing a paired exchange. And she said, the only way I'll do that is if Al says it's okay. And, you know, but we talked about it, and we both agreed that, and she pushed it. She didn't want to do it. She wanted to give it to me. So I asked the surgeon, or asked the doctor, I said, if I was your dad, would you let me have her kidney? And he said, absolutely. And I said, okay, let's go with hers. He said, as long as we can keep your creatinine below 2, you're going to be good. And my creatinine hovers around 1.2 and has for 10 years. So, of course, you know, you got to be consistent in taking your medicine and drinking water, and, you know, get some exercise and all those things, which I'm able to do. But it's been a ride now. It's been a ride.
Yeah, you know what I really like about your story, and at least that's kind of how I relate it in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, but you're that young 20-something, maybe even teenager that's, you know, almost 20 years old, and you have found the woman you want to marry the rest of your life. And you said, oh no, I got to go meet with her daddy. I got to meet with her mommy. I got to meet with her brothers. And it sounded like you was courting that kidney, if you know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the funny thing is that, you know, like I said, she's 5'4", maybe, I don't know, she's 100 pounds, 110 pounds. I'm 6'5", and weigh about 295. So, you know, we have a lot of pictures side by side, and it's just, oh, bless her heart. She's such a sweet, sweet person, a great spirit. But, you know, to see us side by side, you would have to question how her little kidney takes care of my big self. You know what I'm saying? But I did. I had a deep feeling that I needed to get her family's approval. I don't know why. It's just my nature. And, I think it helped in some small way draw us all closer together. Now it's kind of a family, to go to the girls especially and talk to them and, make sure they were all in, because it was their mama. It had to be somewhat scary for them. Her husband, greatest guy in the world, he was gung ho from the get go, and he's my football watching buddy now. And it's wild. The doctor was right. They give you 2 to give 1 away. And, while I was going to the transplant clinic, I got to meet a lot of people, that were in the same position, and all had different stories. The thing I would say is appeal to everybody to consider being a donor. The recipient's insurance pays for it. Like Carrie Ann, she was only down for, 2 or 3 weeks, from work and things like that. She's doing great. I don't know. I just wish there were more donors. I wish there were more people willing to be living donors, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people out there need kidneys. I think there's in the U.S. alone, or I think there's over 100,000 people that are in need of a kidney. So it's
crazy. It's crazy. I'm on I'm a participant in some of the Facebook pages and whatnot, yours included, of different transplant sites and whatnot. And just to read the stories, hear the stories, you're right. There are a lot of people that need not only kidneys, but, livers and lungs, pancreas, heart, all the different things that they can transplant now. The floor I was on, they did kidneys and livers. There was a lot of people up there when I was there. I had a rejection episode about 3 weeks in. Had to go back to the hospital, and they put me on a 10-day IV drip of whatever the drug was. I don't even remember, thymoglobulin or something like that. And it was an 8-hour process, but it took care of it. Whatever they saw and however they did it took care of it. But it was a 10-day process. But ever since, kidney's done fine, and we're blessed. God has blessed us deeply and richly.
Now, if I can go back to the beginning again, because I had a question in there, but we kept going. When you said, because now I've heard this with hearts before and other organs, but now what were you working to build up? Was your body just worn down, or what did they need for you to do to get ready for the transplant or to be approved?
Well, quite honestly, at the time, I was smoking, and that was the biggest thing. Had to quit that. And then there was another, some kind of enzyme or something. I can't remember, but there was a certain vitamin concoction they put me on. I wish I could explain it. I can't. But it was something in the blood work that I had to take a supplement for a short amount of time. But I would say the main thing was the smoking, which, honestly, shame on me. I quit smoking when I had my heart attack. And then probably a couple of years before the kidney situation, the transplant, I had started back. And, stupid me is all I can say. But anyway, that stopped it pretty quick. So I quit with no problems. Hadn't been back to it. We'll never go back to it. But that was the biggest thing. Okay. And then as far as my big question for life now has been, was I born with one kidney? Had I injured myself at some point? Playing football in high school, or I can go back. We went snow skiing one time. And I fell, and underneath the snow, there was a cinder block. And I happened to fall right on it, on my back, on my lower back. And I remember, back then I had urinated some blood. They'd gone to the doctor and they just told me, maybe I'd bruised it, but, hindsight, maybe that was it.
Maybe that was the beginning of the end for that. And yeah.
Yeah. It's a question I've always had, how that happened. I have a sister, older sister, that had lost a kidney at childbirth. She had gotten some kind of infection in it, and they ended up taking it shortly after she had given birth. So that's really it.
Now, here's a question I'm going to ask you. And now of course, mine was a little bit different because I had to go through also bypass surgery before I was even allowed, to get the heart transplant because I wasn't sick enough yet to say, you need a heart transplant. But yet I was sick enough where they said, you've got to have bypass or you're going to have some major problems. So we need to, perform the bypass. And I always tell people, and the bypass was 10 times worse than my heart transplant. And of course I had a bad heart from birth, but when I woke up, like you said, you felt different. When I first woke up after my heart transplant, and probably because I did have a bad heart from birth, I felt like Superman, right out of the gate. I mean, I was ready to go. And my kidney transplant was a little bit rougher than my heart transplant. But of course, that bypass surgery was the one that almost took me out more than the other two surgeries for sure.
Yeah, that bypass surgery. This is a true story. It's funny now. It wasn't funny then. But, when I woke up, of course, they got your hands strapped down. At least they did mine. I'm on a ventilator. They've got tape over my eyes. I wake up, I feel pretty good other than the ventilator. I hated that thing. But my wife and my sister came in, and they're standing over me, and they're both wailing about how bad I look and how swollen I am, and I'm this and I'm that. And all I wanted to do was tell them, hey, I'm okay, and I'd appreciate it if y'all be quiet because you're not helping me right now. But you're right. The bypass was a lot tougher than the kidney transplant. Obviously, I can't even comprehend a heart transplant, even though I had a really good friend to have one a year ago in December who's doing fantastic, which is just unbelievable to me that the medical community can even do these things. But I get you. I hear you.
Yeah, talk about being blessed. I had surgeries all through my grade school years and middle school, and then I had the bypass surgery. And it seemed like each time they go, well, we got something new. We think it'll work and it'll keep you living. Because they told my parents I'd live to see my teens, and that was about it.
Wow.
And you and I are the same age, so that shows how well that you're not going to be around after your teen years worked out for everybody. But so yeah, we're both very blessed there. That's for sure, Al.
Well, the thing about the heart, and I tell people all the time because I try to stay in, like I said, I'm a member of some of these groups and stuff, and I try to be an encourager online, but, people all the time asking about, have you had any more heart issues, whatnot. After I had my transplant and everything, I officiated high school and some college basketball for 23 years afterwards. And I had not had any more heart issues until a couple of years ago. And I just, I think we talked about it offline, but had some atrial flutter, so I had to be cardioverted. Then I had an ablation. Now I have a pacemaker because I was having some severe number of PVCs. But I feel great. I don't officiate anymore at almost 70 years old. But just to say, they can do marvelous and wonderful things in operating rooms across America right now. But it just amazes me.
Well, you got a great story there, Alan. Also sounds like Carrie Ann has a great story. We need to get her on down the road and hear from her. And
so I was just going to say, I wish you would be, Jay, because she's phenomenal, and gosh, she has such a tremendous story, and it would be so beneficial to anybody that listens that is even considering a transplant or somebody. Considering being a donor. Plus, anybody facing a transplant, it would be an encouragement to them to listen to her because her story is just unbelievable.
And it sounds like she was kind of the same type of person. it amazes me, and maybe I'm just a selfish individual. I don't know. But maybe it's because I've been sick all my life too, and I really couldn't do anything like that. But it amazes me that people just kind of like wake up in the middle of the night or in the middle of the afternoon and go, you know what? I'm going to donate a kidney. And it just comes out of nowhere. And they're determined, hell or high water, they're going to give up their kidney so another person's life can, be encouraged and live on and just, do like you, feeling great. It's amazing. And we're so blessed by having those people that are out there.
Just a short tidbit, I'd let her tell it, if you ever get her on. But talking about that of just waking up when they say, wham, bam, I want to give a kidney. She was sitting, when this process started at church, and she was considering or going to give the kidney to the lady that is now deceased. She has a note that she has in her Bible where she wrote it during the service, and it's to her husband sitting beside her. It says, God just told me to give a kidney. And that's not an epiphany. That's a God thing to me anyway. Mm-hmm. But she has that note. That's just part of the story.
Oh yeah, we definitely down the road have to get her on. There's no doubt about it. So we'll make sure that we do that, and you can get us, in touch and things like that. Now, one other question I have, and they do say that it happens more with heart transplant patients than kidneys, but it does happen with kidneys, and especially now that you know her, is there anything that has changed? And does she say, well, I like that. Like when you go to the restaurant, you order maybe something you usually didn't order, and she goes, I've liked that my entire life. Have you had any of those experiences?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's life is normal. It's interesting that, when you come out of transplant, they give you the list. You can't do open salad bars. You can't do grapefruit, pomegranate because it interacts with the immunosuppressant drugs. You can't eat raw dish. You can't go swimming in the ocean. With all these things, as you probably know, all these do nots.
Yeah. And there's a long list.
If I'm being honest, we've probably been on, 10, 15 cruises since I had transplant. Of course, you got a lot of open food bars on cruises, and I love the ocean. I grew up on the ocean. I'm in the ocean. I'm not saying all this to say, you shouldn't be careful what where you are and what you're doing. But it's, I know they say it to be on the side of safety, I guess, but it's not been something that I've focused on, to be honest with you. And I've had no problems at all. I will say that I'm very religious, and I encourage all, because I read horror stories on these focus groups where people don't take their medicine like they're supposed to, and they don't follow up with the doctor like they're supposed to, and then all of a sudden they're back in kidney failure, and they're asking why. Yeah. My answer is, well, shame on you for not following the rules, because the rules are, I take my medicine every 12 hours, and I have my appointments. I have to see a dermatologist, because you're more susceptible to skin cancers, and I see them regularly, and my nephrologist and my cardiologist, all those. But that's a shout out, to be religious about taking your medicine and seeing the doctors. And I've had. Go ahead, BJ. I'm sorry,
I was just going to say, and it's not that hard to do either. Of course, maybe for some people it is a new experience, but it's just second nature. It should be just second nature to everybody.
It is. Well, the other thing is, I would say I see a lot of people that have had their kidneys for 30 years. It's crazy. I had a friend that got a cadaver kidney back in the day. Unfortunately, he just passed away from something else, but he was on year 24 with a cadaver kidney, and, can all just trace it back to being very sincere about taking your medicine on time and doing what the doctor says do. It's just that simple.
Oh, I think the funniest part of it all, really, because I got my heart back in 2003, And, like you said, you learn how to keep your hands washed, use hand sanitizers.
Yep.
When you're in the hospital, they make you want to make sure you wear your mask if you go to the doctor's office and so when COVID came and everybody was freaking out because of all these things you were supposed to do, I was saying, the wife and I both were looking at each other and said, hey, we've been doing this for the last 15, 20 years, people. This ain't nothing new to me.
Yeah, I think the only thing we did different is Debbie my wife would go to the store and she'd bring the groceries home and we'd lay them out in the garage. And, the things that were packaged, she'd spray with Lysol or something. It was crazy. But, yeah, you're right. We did nothing different. I mean, nothing. It was crazy.
This is what I was supposed to do. This is what they told me to do back in 2003, and I've been doing it ever since. So,
absolutely, man. That's wild.
Well, Al, you got anything else you want to add to the story before we let you go? And like I said, it is a cool, amazing story, and I'm so glad you're doing well. And I wish you nothing but happiness and good health in the future. And as we wrap things up, anything you want to say before we let you go?
No, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity just to come on and share my story. I try to share it every chance I get because, like I said, I think, we need more people willing to be living donors. And I don't think the average person is educated as to what it means and what it takes. And this is it's a great way, and I so appreciate the podcast in and by itself. I didn't know it was out there. I think it's wonderful. I've shared it with a lot of people already, but thank you for doing your part and to get the word out. And I sincerely appreciate you, brother, and pray God blesses you and your family and your health.
Much appreciated, sir, and you have a marvelous day and stay healthy.
Thank you, BJ. God bless.
Thanks to Al Sheneman for sharing his story with us today. Be sure to join us every Tuesday for a new heartfelt episode of Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And if you have a transplant story you'd like to share, love to hear from you. Just reach out at giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook. Same name, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.